a second. Whenever I see graffiti and hear hip hop, it just makes me want to just, you know. But I feel more comfortable sitting, talking with you, just expressing some ideas. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulil Kareem. Brothers, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I just first would like to just thank our dear beloved brother who came to this part of the world to kind of share with us something that I think is crucial for us in terms of Muslims in this part of the world as well as the rest of the world, and that is the issue of the art, the artistic expression of Muslims. This is a critical area for us to think about and reflect on. I just want to reflect very briefly on three particular points. One has to do with kind of personal reflections. The second one is reflection on some aspect of history, and the third is the dilemma of the Muslim artist. And I connect this graffiti work and what you're doing, as I was in Chicago when you were there, and the people are still talking about impact that you had there, because graffiti, the art, the expression of the art that transformed these urban spaces. It transforms these urban kind of ghetto spaces. The whole expression of graffiti is so transformative. When you were in Chicago, as we saw in the film, the people were coming up to you from the street, people in the neighborhood, because graffiti became, as it were, a kind of lingua franca. It became like a lexicon or grammar that connected Muslims to the rest of the population of young people globally. It is part of a globalized artistic expression that links young people with a kind of language, a lexicon that is all their own. So when you came to Chicago and made that connection, even though the intention was not necessarily to give dawah, but it did in fact promote a profound expression of Islam, because people are trying to understand and connect with Muslims as being part of kind of a community that they can relate to. We live in these spaces, but we're alienated from the people often, and I say this in many instances. Brothers who are coming out of masjids from Jamaat Tabligh in the south side of Chicago and straight up urban ghetto Chicago come out of the mosque in storefronts, stepping on crack vials, going to another side of the city of Chicago where the South Asians live to give dawah, moving beyond the people that they live in the neighborhood with, and the people don't even know who they are or have any idea of where they're coming from. So the idea of this artistic expression connecting and linking Muslims with everyday people who are living on the margins in these communities, and the idea that you beautify those communities become so transformative and so important and so significant. And I connect that with the larger framework in terms of the issue of art and artistic expression in hip-hop. Because early on, after Tupac was killed, I organized on a personal level a town hall meeting of Muslim youth, because I had the impression that Muslim youth were much more tied into hip-hop than their parents realized. So after I called this forum, we had about 500 Muslim youth. Half of them were in tears about the fact that Tupac had been killed. That's how much they loved him. They knew more about Tupac in his life than they knew about the Prophet Muhammad. That is a reality in urban America that made me realize that I needed to know much more about hip-hop and youth culture and young people than I knew. So that was the pivotal moment in which I began to study and do research on hip-hop and its culture, and also trying to utilize it as a tool to link and to communicate with young people. I remember I was riding on the south side of Chicago with a friend of mine trying to find his son who was selling drugs, a Muslim brother. His son was selling drugs in the south side of Chicago. I was riding around in the van trying to find him in these various crack houses and drug dens. We found his son. His son came and sat in the car. And I was sitting there trying to figure out a way to communicate to this young Muslim man. And I realized my inability, my lack of expertise in being able to communicate with a person, a Muslim who was born a Muslim in America. Like so many of our young people, particularly African Americans, who are born Muslims who have just lost their way. We just about lost a whole generation of young people. So I recognized my inability to communicate, and I thought about trying to explain to him some of the great history of the Muslims in the Moorish Spain, tried to talk about the history of Islam, and that nothing resonated with him until I asked him who was his favorite rap artist, and he said, T.I. So I said, okay, play it. It was so horrendous. I mean, what they were saying, I thought the law was going to strike the card. But the point is, we connected. And then I began to translate, because I had heard T.I., because I listened to hip-hop music. I was trying to understand what, because T.I. was telling the story of, and this was a story that resonated with this young brother. He told me, he said, I go to the school every day, and I just try to survive, because the Crips and the Bloods are in my high school. I can just navigate through the gang wars, trying to